Well, he is the co-creator and driving force behind the Occupy movement, which started on Wall Street and went global, even in our city. His work has been published in the New York Times, the Guardian Weekly, and profiled in some of the top publications in the world. His latest work is The End of Protest, a new playbook for revolution. And Micah White joins us now in studio. Thanks so much for coming in.
Absolute pleasure.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to take a run at this, and then you can correct me as we go,
okay.
Because I am not in your intellectual wheelhouse. So I always felt like I was playing catch-up through this, but I'm trying to get a grasp of it. At the end of the day, you're an activist, and you are stating that the way that people protest and the current state of activism is not working.
Correct.
Fair?
Correct.
And the movement that you drove, right. Occupy, failed.
Right. Right. Yeah. I call Occupy Wall Street a constructive failure. It wasn't a total failure. Obviously, some good things happened out of it. It changed the discourse, trained a new generation of activists. But it failed to achieve its goal, which was to get the money out of politics, to give power to the 99%. And so what I say basically is protest is broken, is that protesters are using these behaviors, these ritualized behaviors, and they don't create social change anymore. And so as activists, as protesters, it's not about not protesting, but it's about protesting differently, learning new social protest behaviors.
And within that, again, as I attempt to read through this and understand what it is you're trying to say, to me, in layman's terms, you're saying activists protesting almost now, you have to kind of get in the game, opposed to being on the outside looking in. And like you're saying, the protests and the marches that we cover as media are becoming mundane. And you're saying, in some ways, that the activists and the protesters have to get access to power.
I think that for activists, the number one thing to realize is that the reason why we're protesting, why we're doing these social behaviors, is because we're trying to attain some sort of sovereignty. We're trying to get to some sort of position where, as protesters, instead of making demands of the people in power, we are the people in power. And so in order to do that, in our world, there's two ways. You can win elections or you can win wars. And I think, obviously, wars, not a good idea. Let's not turn it into Syria and Libya and all this kind of stuff. But elections are something that I can imagine a social movement very quickly arising in order to swing elections and get the 99% into power. And so I think that it's about reorienting around this question of, well, how do we actually become the ones who are governing our cities? How do we actually become the ones who are running and deciding on the laws and this kind of stuff without regressing back to old party politics and leaders and all this kind of stuff?
Well, on that point, you're American, and what's happening right now in your country, is it fair to say the Bernie Sanders type, the Donald Trump type, is that a revolution to some degree?
I think that they're obviously symptomatic of Occupy Wall Street in the sense that people in America and around the world generally are desperate for social change. The things that we protested about in 2011 haven't fundamentally changed. And so they're desperate for social change at the same time as they understand that protest is broken. But I think that these two candidates are really a regression. You know, they're a regression back to putting our hope into these leaders who will be these charismatic single individuals who will somehow save us, whether it's Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders. And that the real lesson, I think, of Occupy Wall Street is that we need to put our hope back into social movements. We can have a situation where social movements, not individual leaders, are the ones who are actually governing.
You think the leaders would come through a movement?
I think that what will happen is that they will basically, yes, you'll have a situation where social movements are able to appoint delegates of the movement. And so this person isn't the leader, he's so much as someone who represents the social movement's will in positions of power.
There's no way of tackling your entire book in a 3-minute interview. It's fascinating and in-depth, and there's a lot of twists and turns, and it was really interesting. I really appreciate your time and your insight. You can certainly get more out of this, because the book is The End of Protest, a new playbook for revolution, and he will be at the Big Secret Theater tonight at Arts Commons at 7 o'clock for WordFest. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.